Hi, I'm Tiffany Dunn. I'm the Community Group Director here at Crossroads Church. And today I'm here with Pastor Chris. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we can set you guys up really well to be able to have vulnerable conversations within your group. Thank you so much, Chris. I'm sure that you've been able to walk through many vulnerable conversations with people, and I really appreciate your input in this today. When we talk about vulnerable conversations and we talk about the building blocks that need to take place within groups for people to feel like they can trust those that they're sharing with, what kind of things need to be established in a group for somebody to feel safe to share something vulnerable that's going on?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, I think that we all want to see our groups go deeper, and we all want to have more vulnerable conversations, but how to get there is kind of sometimes the tricky part.
Right.
And so one of the tools that we use in Stephen Ministry, that we use to train our Stephen ministers, is what we call the Safe House. And so the Safe House is a house that sits on a foundation, and like any house, without a good foundation, the house doesn't stand.
Right.
And so really there's these 5 things of the Safe House that have to be in place. So the foundation is what we call grace-based acceptance. People, if they're going to be vulnerable, they need to know that whatever they share is not going to come back on them with judgment or dirty looks or whatever it is, but they need to know that whatever they share, that there's going to be a level of grace-based acceptance, which is something that we all have experienced, that we all need.
Right.
We need to know that we're still going to be accepted by those that we're sharing with. And then there's 2 walls to the Safe House. One wall is empathy. So as someone is sharing and being vulnerable, we need to meet them there with empathy. And empathy is different than sympathy, because empathy is more about feeling what they're feeling. So when someone's sharing something and they have heavy feelings of grief or guilt or regret or anger or whatever it is, to be able to empathize with them, and let them know that you know how they're feeling, because you're feeling along with them.
Right.
And you can only empathize after you're listening, and so that's the other wall. So listening really comes first, that when someone's sharing, you have to, as a group, really be listening to them, actively listening to them, minimizing distractions, and tracking along with them so that you're hearing what they're saying, and not only what they're saying, but watching their body language and hearing what they're not saying and hearing how they're saying it. All of those things inform us about what the person is trying to share.
Right.
The roof of the Safe House is confidentiality. And we like to use what we call a 2-layered confidentiality. And what that means is that whatever gets talked about here stays here.
Yep.
But the second layer is that I'm not going to see you on the weekend at church or in the grocery store or whatever and ask you about what it is that you shared.
Right.
So if it's outside of the group, it doesn't come up unless the person who shared brings it up.
Yes.
So that's the 2 layers of confidentiality, which are super important. And then finally, the 5th piece is that the door into the Safe House is trust. And so when all of these things are in place, where there's grace-based acceptance, where there's listening that's happening, where there's empathy, and where there's confidentiality, then people can open the door of trust into the Safe House. And that's really when you're able to dive down deep and become vulnerable with people. And I think one of the most important things too is realizing that it's not our job to fix anybody.
Right.
Sometimes that can add a lot of pressure to us when we think, oh man, this person's being vulnerable and sharing a lot. I need to give them the right answer. I need to give them the right thing to do to fix that. I need to say the right thing to console them. I need to whatever. But realizing that, look, it's not any of our jobs to fix anybody else. That's God's work. That's what He does.
Yes.
It's our job to meet them where they're at, to listen, to genuinely care for them, and to walk through their journey, whatever that journey is, along with them. And so that's the Safe House. And I think the Safe House leads to greater depths of vulnerability for people.
I agree. And in this season, we've all experienced loss of some sort. And we've all had to grieve things that 2020 has taken away from us or looks different than before. And so I think establishing these within the group and being intentional about listening, being intentional about grace, being intentional about empathy, and being intentional about confidentiality all lends towards people being able to open up and talk about what has this really looked like for us and what am I grieving. And so as you talk in your groups, I really encourage you not only to be intentional about each of the parts that Chris has just talked about, but also being intentional about what's stirring inside of you and what you would like to share as well. And so as you begin opening up in your groups, I encourage you to do two things. One, really be leaning into the Lord. This season, we are dependent on Him for what we need to be able to receive healing in this space. But two, to depend on each other, to really depend on your group as we listen to one another, as we talk through some of the things. And like Chris emphasized, we don't have to fix it. We can just walk through that together. I encourage you to continue in these deep relationships to receive healing. I'm praying for you and I'm encouraging you in this space.